Hey everyone, Be Righteous here, and this is the state of the game everybody has been looking forward to, especially me. I've been waiting for so long and they did not disappoint. This is the second state of the game of the year, January 15, 2020. And as always, they started out with the priority alerts, bug fixes, changes, but they didn't spend a lot of time on that, which was great. They went straight into the developer interview. They had Drew and Frederick Dylander on, and I'm sure you've been hearing of Frederick a lot in the past few weeks. He's in charge of guns and many of the RPG aspects, so we wanted to hear from him. First, they touched on too much loot, which causes lots of frustration, and I see what they mean because I would farm for hours and get maybe one good item. It's crazy. Or not to mention the disaster of stash space and management. So they said there's going to be something called a new gear game because all these factors make it too frustrating, too rare to get usable things, hard to understand, have to keep too many things, no satisfaction in god rolls, and there are too many hybrid builds, not enough rolls. All these factors were in tandem with the fact that you get too much for one build. They also spoke of the gear we currently have will not be wasted, but instead converted to the new system, which I was particularly happy about. Every previous patch made it so that we had to completely refarm. So that's good. That's real good news. Speaking of the conversion, this has given us an idea of how the gear will look come TU7. They're getting rid of the budget system. Every stat will be able to be rolled at max, which is what I was saying in my Righteous Thoughts video, the optimization station. This is such great news because all stats will be able to get balanced. Don't worry, the build diversity will still be there. It's just that everything when it comes to stats will be a lot more fair to players. With this new system, they're reverting back to the core attributes, which is something similar to Division 1, but more straightforward. This is the only place you can get weapon damage, armor, or skill power. And by the way, the actual armor percentage stat is gone. I think that's a step in the right direction because these overpowered armor builds is nuts. That needs to go somewhere, honestly. Health and the recalibration hasn't changed much, I don't think, because you can still only recal one attribute. Also, we'll be able to know what is the maximum value each stat can roll to, because I personally would always wonder what the max roll was for certain stats. You'll even be able to see how good or bad your weapon will be when it drops, so that's good too. Okay, so talents are apparently going to be a huge focus in the future update. One reason is because it will help with the idea of no longer having requirements for them. Here's an example. Composure, which will be moved to the chest piece instead of the knee pads, will amplify all weapon damage on your gear, meaning all red stats. This will encourage a more focused approach to that specific playstyle. This also applies to gun talents, and they've taken a look at all talents in general and revamped them. Frederick did say something interesting though. He said that the talents will be on the chest piece and in the backpack. Next up, they spoke of build-defining talents. Wow, look at these new talents here. They're still in development, but they look really sweet and definitely promote team synergy. I mean, this first one here called Leadership. Performing a cover-to-cover grants 20% bonus armor to you and all allies for 10 seconds. Or Companion, while you're within 5 meters of an ally or a skill, total weapon damage is increased by 15%. This other one just sounds awesome. Empathetic Resolve. When you repair an ally, or heal an ally, I guess, increase their total weapon and skill damage by 20% for 10 seconds and 5% if self. If this doesn't promote team synergy, then I don't know what does. If you noticed how it says 5% if self, so you're better off using it with the team. This gives an incentive to being a healer or support player, which this game currently lacks. And I do believe these are all chess pieces. Also, if you look at the crit hit damage stat right here and the orange color behind it, that means it's a god roll. People on chat kept asking about the skill tier you see right here, and all Drew said was that they're going to get into that next week, but that they're changing how skill power works in an impactful way, so stay tuned. Mods were spoken of as well, and they said there won't be as many and only have one stat as well. So we'll be able to know how many mods we need instead of just keeping so many lying around just in case we need it. This was great news to hear. Now I know you see just group talents right here that are still in development, and someone did ask if there are only group synergy talents because, you know, there are solo players out there, and the answer is no. There are more talents geared towards that particular playstyle. This picture here confirms that there are going to be talents only on the chest piece in the backpack. Check out Obliterate on the chest piece. Crazy, right? So there will be no talents anywhere else. This might be good because it makes building less complicated. Exotics, gear sets, and named items were built around this system. What Frederick said about the named items that normally have a talent in that slot, like for example gloves, firm handshakes, perfectly wicked, that particular stat would allow a better than allowed stat roll reaching past the bar. Like for example, if gloves rolled 10% crit hit chance, instead it will possibly be 12% crit hit chance, meaning a super god roll. Exotics will still have their talents, which finally separates exotics from the rest because the BTSU gloves have talents on them. They're gloves, and they're only going to be talents on the backpack and the chest piece. So this means it will make exotics more than normal gear, which it was originally supposed to be. Oh man, this is great. It will matter. Gear sets have been revisited as well. They said these have been made more gratifying and powerful. They're still definitely useful, but less complicated. They've been given more of an incentive to run in order to compensate for not having the talents that are allowed on brand sets. So to make them even more relevant and easier to run alongside brand sets, they've been given something called amplification talents. These bring up the level of the gear set effect to a higher output. So you have a real choice of what to run and use. This system is really reminding me of the Division 1 system, which trust me is a good sign. All of these changes are coming with new content that we will be able to play as well, because a lot of people were worried about that. With all of the changes that have been made in the past in this game, a lot of content has been lacking. So with them fixing the game, it made it harder to keep content flowing. But it's coming along with the fixes. Someone also commented and said that they were scared that the game will be oversimplified. Frederick gave a beautiful response to this. Let me just let you hear from the man himself.
It's like I said, like a piece can be easy to understand. That doesn't mean that all of a build, when you put everything together and have everything synergized, is doesn't have depth and doesn't have a lot of decision making and choices, and that's the gratifying part. I mean, the game should be gratifying because you did a lot of smart things when you put together your build, not that you knew a lot of obscure things that other people didn't have the energy to Google, right?
Yeah.
Like just to be quite frank.
Great response, because a lot of my friends that I know in real life don't even play this game because it's too complicated for them. So hopefully this will even bring more players into the Division world. A lot of these changes have been assisted by ETF, Reddit, and the community. So this update will be very much what people want. Drop rates were addressed as well. Like I said earlier, you get a lot of loot from farming for hours and hours on end, and the majority of it is trash. So they want to fix this by lessening loot but making it more relevant and better quality. There was a specific developer interview that they showed where Bruce Kelly, who works on the RNG aspects of the game, and Trick Dempsey, who's a senior game designer, they were asked a few questions. Check this out.
Who are you and what do you do here?
My name is Bruce Kelly, and I'm a game designer on the RPG team.
So the reason I'm speaking to you today is we've seen a lot of questions regarding named gear, named weapons, and all sorts of named stuff. And will we be seeing a lot more of them in future updates?
Absolutely. With the revisions to the gear game and what I call Gear 2.0, we've had to take a holistic look at all of our gear, and that includes named items and named weapons and gear. And for moving forward, we're going to be almost doubling the existing named weapons and gear, and there's always more to come. We're always adding new named items. When they're going to be available, we'll have to wait and see.
I'm Trick Dempsey. I'm a senior game designer on the Division 2. I generally work in bounties, living world invasions, other upcoming features, but generally end game content loops, basically.
So you're going to be the perfect person to hopefully answer this question, and it's regarding the nest control point. A lot of players, when they go to try and take control of it, sometimes the allies don't turn up or don't come to help you. So is there a reason behind that?
So it's not necessarily obvious when you play the living world, but it is actually fully simulated. And so in order for an attack to be available for you to call back in with firing your flare, there needs to be a control point or settlement nearby that is neither under attack currently nor is sending out an attack. So if they currently have an attack squad going off one place, they only have one attack squad available. And so until it has either failed or succeeded at its mission, they will not be able to send help for you. And the range is about 1 kilometer, if I remember correctly, but it can vary based on some arcane logic. But essentially, you have to have a control point or a settlement in range, and they have to be available, which, the only times that you encounter the fact that we're in that simulation is when you're like, I need backup. And they're like, no, I'm sorry, you don't get backup today. And so the best way to handle it is really to go doing some cleanup, is look at the nearest control point to you, or look at the nearest settlement and say, is the settlement blockaded? Is the settlement currently, or control point currently, launching an attack? And can I help that attack out? This can make it pretty tough if you've like just made a control point level 4 and you step in and you're like, oh, there's no backup here. I have a limited amount of time before it drops back down to level 3 to go clear out a different place and then come back. But also, if you babysit your little troops a little bit, you can normally make certain that you've actually got available resources there. The nest is problematic because it has so few people who can help it, just by the sort of geometry of the map. There are a few other locations, generally inside of the southeast of the map, that can happen to as well. But the nest is probably the most geographically isolated from like a attack paths standpoint.
As I said before, every piece of gear that you have currently will be converted to the new system and will be similar in power level. So if you have a God Roll chess piece, for example, that will be similar to the new system's God Roll. So farming right now is still relevant to the new patch coming. Obviously, some items will be a bit different, but that's normal with a change like this. One good change also was that if you get a God Roll piece of gear that rolls with a talent that is for a playstyle you don't want necessarily, then you can roll one you need on there that fits the appropriate playstyle. Remember in Thylander's tweet, he said passive talents are being removed. So that is a major reason why we can't do that. This is a very good change. One subject they addressed also that surprised me was that damage to elites is going to be gone completely. But there's a reason for this. And if you have like damage to elites now on your gear, which I'm sure a lot of you have, it'll be converted to some other all-around damage stat that will help you. The approach that they're taking is damage will be damage, period. Not specific to a certain group. Man, this state of the game was on point, I must say, and everything they spoke of I got excited about. All of this information will not be in episode 3, which will be released in February, but it will come out on a later date after episode 3. Next week's State of the Game, we'll be discussing calibration, stat storing, skill power refactorization, which are 2 very huge changes coming to the game. I must say that this State of the Game was what I personally have been looking forward to seeing and hearing. So much great news, and I do believe that this will bring so many players back and also new players to the game. I hope you're as excited about it as I am, because it seems like a lot of what I'm hoping for with this game's future. Quality of life for games are the most important aspects of them. And when time is taken to improve that, it's a good sign. If you enjoyed this video and it helped you out in any way, please drop a like and hit that subscribe button. I will see you in next week's State of the Game recap. Be right out.